you all must have enjoyed the first session in retail management. Now, for the second session, we are having Dr. Shikarna B. Barua with us. Ma'am is having 30 years of work experience in management education and in small and medium enterprises development with thrust on entrepreneurship and livelihood promotion. She also has extensive experience in action, research, and projects relating to development of livelihood clusters, especially in the northeastern region of India. Since the last 4 years, she has been actively involved in facilitating creation of a startup ecosystem in Assam and has been regularly mentoring and hand-holding existing and potential startups in opportunity guidance and scaling up. Ma'am has represented Northeast India in various international forums and lead business delegations globally. She has also represented the country as a speaker in international conference in countries like Latin America and Malaysia. And Dr. Barua has received the Bharat Vikas Award for her contribution in the livelihood sector from the Institute of Self-Reliance on 19th November 2017. Today, ma'am will be talking about emerging entrepreneurial landscape, opportunities and challenges, which we are generally talking after COVID scenario also. So, ma'am, on behalf of Anveshan Foundation, I welcome you to this particular forum. It is really great to have you and to listen your views in the topic. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Can I just before I begin, can I just get an idea about who the participants are and how many number? Yeah,
Ma'am, this is
come back.
actually amalgamation of the students and
Hmm.
some of the promoters of startups and some faculty members are also there, sir, from our institute and from other institutes.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. Very good evening to all present today. So I think we have a mix of students, entrepreneurs, faculty, everyone here, and glad that we're going to discuss something very important and interesting in today's time. That is, changing entrepreneurial landscape, and in that context, the emerging business opportunities and how what are the skill sets required, and opportunities, how do we capitalize on the opportunities, etc., the whole gamut that we are going to discuss here. I think we have 1 hour time with us, right? And I try to make it as interactive as possible, so that after giving a background we get an opportunity to discuss, ask questions in between, and carry forward the entire session, make it as interactive as possible. So instead of making it a one-way passage, I will try. You can write on the chat box, you can sort of or raise your hands, whatever, and then we can carry and discuss and carry it forward. Okay. So with that context setting, let us begin by looking at what is the changing in entrepreneurial landscape. What is the change which is happening in the entrepreneurial landscape today? Uh, uh, so, as we are all aware, that India is today passing through a very very interesting time in history. Actually, last at least a decade has been something very interesting for India, and what India is going through at the moment, possibly never in history we will come through a period in which such interesting times are happening. And somehow, suddenly, especially in the last 4 or 5 years, and more so in the last 2 3 years, everyone is talking about started talking about entrepreneurship today. Everyone, and today we find that best of the best institutions, even the premier institutions, you will find that people are looking at starting their business. They're not opting for a job, but they're thinking about starting their business today. And if you look at the entire spectrum, we will find that people at all spectrum, right from the bottom of the pyramid to people at the corporate sector, everyone is looking at starting a business. And there is also another very important thing which is happening, that there is no age to starting a business. People are giving up their jobs, starting business. People are not joining a job and starting business. So everyone is suddenly talking about entrepreneurship. And even in academic institutions, today we find that we are a part of a incubation, Anveshan incubation. So not only Anveshan, we find most institutions are today saying that, can we start an incubation center? Can we have more people in the entrepreneurship. We are talking about urban, semi-urban incubators. We are talking about rural incubators. Everyone is talking because if you look at the entire sort of the job scenario, if we look at the demography and if you look at the type of people who have the job scenario, um, we will find that more and more people are, looking at, people are looking at starting their own business. Uh, so, let us look at some of the premier institutions first. Then we'll go down to other, tier two, tier three cities, etc. We look at the premier institutions and we are saying that, okay, today I've got a job, but within the campus itself, let me think about starting a business. Just the other day, I was a part of one of the very premier institutions of India, which is IIT Roorkee. And I found that a lot of students were asking me, we get a job, but no one is talking about the job here. Because if we see why people are not getting a job, let us ask a basic question. That when we are talking so much about entrepreneurship, why is it that entrepreneurship has suddenly become so, common today? I mean, why everyone is talking about entrepreneurship? Number one is because as a country, if we have to grow, we have to create jobs. If we look at the type of jobs number of jobs which are available and the number of educated unemployed which is coming up every year, we find that there's a huge gap in terms of jobs which are there and the number of people which are coming up. So in that context, we find that there are huge gaps there. But so it is only when there are more and more enterprises when they're going to come up that we will find that today we are talking about demography, Indian demography, as one of the major assets. Now, this demography can continue to remain being an asset, provided we create more and more jobs. And one of the ways in which we create more jobs is by becoming an entrepreneur. Because when we are creating a enterprise, we are creating jobs, and that's how we are creating wealth for the nation. Now, having said that, can I ask you a basic question? That why do I want to become an entrepreneur? What is the difference between becoming a startup or an entrepreneur and not becoming an entrepreneur? Can I ask you a basic question like that? Most of the time, as students, if I look at most of you as students, we'll find that I want to become an entrepreneur. I will say, I want to become an entrepreneur because why do I want to become an entrepreneur? Because, I get a lot of independence. I want to become my own boss. I'm my own boss. So these are some of the questions which we often say that why I want to start my own business. But going deeper, if we go a little deeper, we will find that there are many more interesting reasons why why I want to become an entrepreneur. Because there's a basic difference between a startup and entrepreneur as well as working somewhere. If I'm working in an organization, what happens is I continue to remain working at a particular area only. Supposing, I am, I suppose I sort of specialize in finance. So whole life, if I specialize in finance and I start working in a corporate or wherever I want to work, whole life I will be doing only finance. If I'm a HR person, whole life I will be doing only HR. If I'm a marketing graduate, graduate or a postgraduate, whole life I will be doing only that. But what happens if I start my own business? What happens is the major thing which happens is that I get to understand a little bit of everything. The most interesting part of an entrepreneurial journey is that the person gets to wear different hats at different times. As a startup, as an entrepreneur, you can never say that I do not suppose I have my own startup. Can I say I might be from a humanities background, but can I ever say that I'm from a humanities background so I don't understand accounts? I can never say that, isn't it? Because if I have my own business, some basics of accounting I have to understand. Or I may be a non-technical person, but I have to understand a little bit of how I'm using technology to enhance my business. So if you look at every aspect that you're going to, get an opportunity to learn, don't you think this journey, even otherwise, is a very interesting journey? because as an entrepreneur, I get to wear different hats at different times. So this is actually something very, very interesting. And as we embark on this journey of having to start up, we will find that there are a lot of interesting things like this. Another thing is that we get an opportunity when we are working somewhere. We, as long as we are working in an organization, we can take ownership about that. This is my organization, this is what I have done. But once I leave the organization, there is no mark that I leave behind in the organization. Once I leave the organization, there's nothing, there's no stamp left behind. I might have worked very hard, but there's no stamp left behind saying that this is something I have created. But as an entrepreneur, I always get an opportunity to say that leave back something permanent. I leave back something permanent. That is, because I can always say that I'm leaving behind something. This is what I created. This is something which I did it. So these are some of the reasons why more and more people are today opting, not only because I become my own boss, but because something that I leave back behind, I add value to the society, and I leave back something permanent. I get an opportunity to leave back something permanent that say that this is something I created. So these are some of the backdrop. These are some of the reasons behind why becoming an entrepreneur. Now, having said that, today startups are synonymous with three things. One is innovation, second is creativity, and the third is mass problem solving capabilities. We're looking at startups. And now there's a basic difference between a startup and an entrepreneur. A typical entrepreneur may not be doing anything much innovative. The typical entrepreneur may not be using technology. But when we're looking at startups, we are normally saying that a startup is doing something innovative as well as using technology as one of the enablers. So when we are looking at from an incubation perspective, we are looking at all of you as startups. The startups are today synonymous with innovation, creativity, and mass problem solving capabilities. Because why mass problem solving capabilities? Because as startups, I'm using technology as one of my enablers. I'm sure with all the startups which are around you, I'm sure you are. When I'm talking about three things: innovation, creativity, and mass problem solving, we're looking at scaling up. We're looking at technology because startup doesn't remain very small. Immediately I start, and because of my business idea, because of technology which I'm using, I get immense opportunity to actually scale up. And startups are today the dream of becoming of India becoming the 5 billion economy, $1 billion economy. We're talking about India becoming the $5 billion economy, and startups are the vehicle by which we can become the $5 billion economy. Now, very quickly, let me take you through the historical perspective. In fact, the entire boom which has happened in the last 10 years. It is only since 1990 to 2000 2010 to 2021 that major changes that have happened. And prior to that, since 1990 95 to 2000, we had some startups like Rediff.com, Fabmart.com, MyTrip.com, 2000. So these were some of the startup, internet during the internet booms. These are some of the enterprises which had come in. And it was post global financial crisis, that is 2008. There was a deeper internet penetration and job instability, youth developing affinity to technology, and entry of generation C, which is the always connected generation. Today we have the generation which is we call the generation C, which is the always connected generation. Now what is happening is that, and then we had the e-commerce platforms coming in, e-commerce players like the Myntra, the Flipkart, Snapdeal, etc. From 2010 onwards, we had these e-commerce players coming in, and we had a lot of more startups coming in. In fact, 2010 to 2020 will always be remembered as a period of democratization. Now, before that, starting up was considered a taboo, a path filled with uncertainty and risk. But last 10 years, what we find is that more than 50,000 tech startups have come in. Don't you think so? This is something very interesting. Last 10 years, more than 50,000 tech startups have come in. And our startups have been raising billions of dollars. Today, anyone, we have different types of investors coming in. We have at the bottom, we have the grant fund, then we have the seed fund, and then we have the venture fund also coming in. India in fact has become the third largest startup ecosystem. Are we aware that India is the third largest ecosystem today as far as startups are concerned? And the key sectors, let us look at the key sectors where startups have come in. We have e-commerce, I've already mentioned. Edutech, we've seen during pandemic the how education as a sector became totally dependent on technology. So edtech startups, I do not know what sort of startups we have here today, goes to the startups that we have here, but education is a sector where we have a lot of startups. And with the Atma Bharat Nirbhar emphasis on that, manufacturing has become a big, game changer. We have, right at the beginning when we started, we didn't even have, we were importing PPE kits. Suddenly, during a period of 1 year, we have started exporting PPE kits. So even, look at manufacturing, where how much manufacturing has changed. So a lot of startups have come up in the manufacturing sector also. Health is the other sector. Has a lot of health tech sector startups have come in. Suddenly we find telemedicine, suddenly we find teleconsultations becoming so a commonplace today. And there is no end to the amount of innovation, etc., which is happening at the health tech sector. So now, pandemic has shown us that health is no longer a physical contact. And technology is one of the enablers in which earlier we were only looking at e-pharmacies and telemedicine. Even if it was there, people were not so comfortable with telemedicine. And look at the range of changes which has happened in the health sector today. Then, of course, we have, enterprise tech, automation. We have understood then how much technology, AI, etc. Then, automotive and enterprise techs have also come in today. So, in the changing entrepreneurial landscape, these are some of the things which are coming in. So there is a lot of emphasis on new age technology. So what happens is technology has become the key driver today. And an idea startup, whichever sector I get a startup idea, I may be from a non-technology background, but I need a technology partner to sort of scale up my idea. So in most people who are here, I do not know if they are not even from the technology sector. You could even look at having technology partners, people with technology background who become your partners. Closer to 2020, we have investor hopes have on sectors integrating new age technology such as deep tech, ad tech, insurance tech, media and entertainment technology, space tech, defense tech, and drone tech. So these are areas in which a lot of startups have come in. So this is something which is happening. And how do I, and now that we are looking at tier 2, tier 3 cities everywhere, people have started coming in. Now during pandemic, what has happened is something very interesting had happened in India. Because of pandemic, what has happened is most of the people, earlier from the metros, they have all gone back home, and working from home has become it's become a norm today. And finally, in future also, you will find that the model which is going to work will be the hybrid model which is going to work. Now with this new group of people who were always settled in metros, etc., now coming back home, I'm talking about tier 2 and tier 3 cities. What is happening is, there are a lot of business opportunities which are coming up in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities also. Always we have to remember, when we look at a business opportunity, an opportunity is not something that we always look at what is happening elsewhere and we think about the idea. A business idea always comes in when we look at a problem. Would anyone like to share one or two of your business ideas You can write it on your chat box, or you can, maybe you can just raise your hands, open your mic, and start saying, would anyone like to share your business idea here in this forum? Anyone? Would you like to share your business idea? What startup do you have? So that, I get to know you better instead of making it a one-way passage. Would anyone like to share what your business idea is?
Yes, yes.
Hmm.
Please feel free to share your business idea. If you do not want much to divulge it.
Hmm? Or anything, if you have already started, if you anyone would like to share anything.
The ma'am actually really want to connect it with the problem, that what kind of problem you are solving.
Exactly. What problem you are
Because,
actually trying to solve?
yeah, because there was a problem related to the taxis, then Ola Uber came, right?
Right,
There were
right.
some problems for the restaurants. People were
Mhm.
not able to understand what the schemes are there. That is why
So how
Zomato,
did you
Swiggy
solve
came.
it? Let us look at How many of you actually has started in the last 1 year? Or are these are all startups which are here are basically relatively new startups, or have they been in business for quite some time?
They are budding entrepreneur, ma'am,
They are
entrepreneur.
budding entrepreneurs. So if they're all budding entrepreneurs, have you seen, what is the sort of new problem that you try to solve? If one thing, let me say, during pandemic, we came up with number one. I said a lot of education sector startups have come in, right? When we say about education sector startups, because content creation has become an interesting idea in the education sector, because suddenly we found that even if we want to teach, we don't have the content. And then another thing in it, let us talk about sector wise now. If we look at the education sector, number content creation became a big business opportunity, and a lot of startups which came up in the content creation. Then there are some startups which also came up. A lot of teachers were not technology savvy. So even to groom up such teachers to use technology, some startups have come in. You've created their own apps, etc., through which it becomes easier for you to do. Then regional language, content creation in your own vernacular language, that those type of startups have suddenly come in. Then in the edutech and the skill space, skill development is a very important area in India. Suddenly you find that skilling was always happening in the classroom setting. So how do you have skill development programs through by using technology? Is it possible? Is it not possible? So new type of startups have come in and said that, can we have some demonstrations on, supposing, you're having a skill development program. Like for example, I met a startup who was dealing with skill development, and in the skill development area they were looking at textile skills. So when you're doing skill development from textile sector, how do you do it? You create your own videos, etc. So different sectors had different opportunities, and people were using technology for in the education sector. Then e-commerce. We all know that during the pandemic, how e-commerce has emerged as one of the most vibrant sectors. And when we say e-commerce, we include also the last mile delivery. So people who were earlier never using any sort of e-commerce to do any sort of marketing, etc., online marketing, have now suddenly said that even right from buying vegetables to buying anything else, you are using e-commerce. So these are, during COVID-19, startups brave the storm, and then they're using, and they have become a lot of business startups have come in. So health is the other sector. I've already said, then logistics is the other sector. So basically, integrating technologies at the core is at the minimum time is what the startups are there. And you'll be surprised that during 2020, during the year of pandemic, there are 11 startups who have joined the Unicorn Club. Yes.
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So there are about 11 startups which have joined the Unicorn Club in 2020. Unicorn are billion-dollar turnover. So although there was a lot of problems, although the entrepreneurs faced a lot of problems, this is one of the most interesting thing is that 11 startups have joined the Unicorn Club, and the entire ecosystem to facilitate startups have become more stronger. There are initiatives, some initiatives. Have you heard about this initiative called Action COVID-19 Team, which is called the ACT? Now, what is that Action COVID-19 Team Act? Is a 100 crore program which aims to seed more than 150 initiatives through grants to combat the economic fallout of the pandemic in India. So this is again, you can go through it, find out that this, what is this act, the Action COVID-19 Team, which is the ACT. They have created a 100 crore program which aims to seed more than 50 initiatives. So if we look at small things, there are a lot of grants now available for startups. Forget about getting venture fund, etc. There were, even before that, you only need to have a good idea to get access to grants. Need to have a good idea to get, and some proof of concept to get access to seed funding. So how many of you are actually looking at getting grants, getting seed fund to actually take off your idea? In Northeast, let me give you an example. We keep on hearing these words, as students or as aspiring on startups. Now, how do I get a venture fund? How do I get a investment in my idea? Now, this is like a value chain. First is that you have an idea. The moment you have an idea, so idea, how do you get an idea? Idea you get by trying to solve a problem. The more and more you're not copying that idea, or you find that the problem actually exists, and then you try to solve that problem. So that's your business idea. The moment you get the business idea, what you do next is you try to create a business canvas from your idea. You put your idea in a business canvas. So once you put your idea in a business canvas, you find out what are the pluses, minuses, and then you draw up your business plan. Just because you have an idea, don't you think people are going to put in money in your idea? Let us be very, let us understand that just because I have an idea, people are not going to put in money there. What I will need next is a proof of concept. So the first stage I need to work on is getting a proof of concept. How do I know that my idea is actually going to work? Proof of concept means that I, test my idea and I get 1 or 2 or 3 customers at least. So which means that the idea that I'm having, it's proven that there are buyers of my idea. The moment I have a proof of concept, then even the investors feel happy. That, okay, not happy, a little confident that, okay, this is a idea in which I can invest. So this stage from an idea generation to having a proof of concept is the most crucial, and it requires a lot of patience, and it requires a lot of going into depth about whether the idea is actually a workable idea or not. Now, to have that proof of concept, there are a lot of grant funds available if your idea is good. So you can tap, if it's in the agri sector, you can tap funds in the agri sector. If it's a technology, so you can, there's the Department of Science and Technology, there's the biotechnology department, there's agriculture, etc. Every sector has got funds now. There's some general funds of grant fund for good ideas. So you can tap the grant fund. For example, in Northeast India, for the first time, we had a grant fund, which we ourselves were looking at. So we were giving a grant to some of our startups. So what was this grant fund? So what we did was, even all these incubation centers can also look at it. We asked for a business idea contest. In the business idea contest, people had given their ideas. We made them pitch their ideas. After pitching the ideas, the jury shortlisted few people. Again, they went through a second round of idea, presentation. And finally, we selected about 30 good ideas. I'm talking about during the pandemic. So these 30 good ideas, we gave them a grant. Grant is not much. Grant is just a 5 lakhs grant. But that grant, because most of our people, a lot of our startups are could be first generation entrepreneurs. And for first generation entrepreneurs, fund may be the biggest problem. Accessing fund might be the biggest problem. So there, if your idea is good, you can look at some grant fund there. But then the grant fund basically helps you to do what? So the grant fund basically helps you to have a proof of concept. I think there's some remarks have been given. Yes, let me just check the chat box. How are interdisciplinary approach in design engineering canvas making successful? It is becoming successful, very much successful. Anything which is interdisciplinary, because we can't limit ourselves to becoming limiting ourselves, because every idea requires an integrated approach. Every idea requires an integrated approach. The more you can integrate, the more you can holistically look at issues. The more the perspective becomes holistic, and investors, because startup is all about getting funding and scaling up. So definitely you have to look at from the interdisciplinary. Okay, we'll come to that later on also. But let me just tell you that about the grant fund. So the grant fund basically helps you to have a proof of concept. So try tapping that through different sources. Keep on looking. I think this is becoming very important. Now, once the grant fund is there, you have a proof of concept. Next comes in, depending on your business idea. Do you need a seed fund or do you need a venture fund? Normally, we go through a seed fund round. Seed fund is like you have some amount of investors coming and investing, and they have a little bit of patience to wait for you. So once you access venture fund, there is no patience. The seed fund has patience. They might be asking for you have to return the fund, etc. But seed fund is another way of looking at funds. But directly from the idea stage, tomorrow itself you will not get venture fund. So you can look at seed funding. A lot of this government of India has created a 1,000 crore seed fund very recently. So getting access to the seed fund could be another idea in which you carry it forward. And then comes the venture fund. Fund comes in much later. But depending on your business idea, if your business idea is creating a lot of social value, in terms of, if your idea is a more like a social enterprise, there could be impact fund also coming in, particularly in social sectors. Then if it is in the health sector, if it is rural livelihood changing sector, if it is in clean energy, etc., in which because of your idea and your environment is going to change, you're impacting livelihoods of people, then you might also get access to impact funding. Impact funding is in difference between impact funding and venture funding is that you get a lot of impact funding. You have a lot of there is a patient capital there. People have the patience to wait. Now, you look at you think about what exactly you're looking for, what is your business idea, and then that's how you look at different funds, etc. Now, but this journey of starting, of having a business idea, of getting a fund is not a very easy journey. Midway you might lose your patience, because when you hear a very rosy story, you find that okay, I'll go through it. But this journey is a very lonely journey. And apart from your idea, another thing which is equally important, even I would say it's even more important, is that do you have the uh, entrepreneurial mindset and the skills to persist? Do you have the entrepreneurial mindset to keep on waiting? Do you have to be do you have the mindset, the entrepreneurial zeal to wait, patience, not to give up easily? These are qualities which are equally very important. Because what happens is, when you get a job versus starting a business, when you take up a job, everything is very clear, that I'm going to get this much of salary, I'm going to get this seat. If I work hard, I'll get my next promotion. I'll get my next increment if I work hard, etc., etc. Unlike that, there's the comfort level in an entrepreneurial journey initially is not there at all. You have to be ready to sit with no office infrastructure, literally no office infrastructure. You have to be ready to work 24 into 7. In fact, you have to eat, drink, sleep with the idea. So I'm sure Professor Aurora, who's here, you will agree that when you see through your incubation center how committed, how sort of committed they are to people who are successful, how committed they are to they basically the idea, and how they have that passion of and zeal of never giving up,
Right,
right?
ma'am. In,
Yes.
in,
So
in our time also, sir, we used to say, ma'am, three
uh,
P's are very important: passion, patience, and perseverance. So,
absolutely, absolutely. Passion, very nicely put up. Passion,
and
patience,
perseverance, ma'am.
perseverance. These are three things which are equally important. So, on the one hand, why I'm trying to emphasize, on the one hand, the idea is important. On the other hand, along with the idea, this backed by idea has to be backed by this. Today you feel that your idea is good. Tomorrow you might find that no one is buying your idea. How do you give up, or do you sort of twist? How do you persist? During the pandemic, there were so many. You have to be convinced with your idea, and you have to um, be at the same time very very sort of aware of what is happening in the environment.
Yes, ma'am. Because, ma'am, unless ma'am promoters are not convinced with their idea, how do they
Mm,
convince their investors? Means
exactly.
how will they articulate? How the
Mhm,
investor will feel confident? Yes, this
mhm.
person can do this job.
Exactly. So that is something very important. And what is required is you have to simultaneously build up your communication and negotiation skills. As a startup, as an entrepreneur, you continuously build up your communication and your negotiation skills. You also have to need the skill of critical thinking, which is so very important. And of course, interpersonal and decision making. So these set of skills, that is, you normally associate these skills with an entrepreneur. Your communication skills, negotiation skills, critical thinking skills, interpersonal skill, and decision making skill. These qualities are normally skill sets or qualities are associated with an entrepreneur always. And today, even in the corporate world, we are looking at people who are not managers but basically entrepreneurs, because we are trying to create more and more of entrepreneurs in the corporate world. So basically, managers who have entrepreneurial skill sets. So ask yourself, one is your idea. The second is also the skill sets which are required. Do I have this? So continuously, and a zeal to keep on acquiring these skill sets. As you know, Alvin Toffler, very famous line, that is unlearn, learn, and relearn. So I have to, as an entrepreneur, continuously unlearn, learn, and keep on relearning. And continuous learning is something which is very very important. The one thing which is happening, and this is something again pandemic has shown us very very clearly, that today anything becomes obsolete very soon. So we cannot rest and say that this is an idea and I keep on resting on that. Even today, to even 2 years 3 years later on, these things become obsolete. Earlier it was 5 years things used to become obsolete. So today, in 5 years, very soon the things become obsolete. So we as entrepreneurs, we require knowledge, skills, competitiveness, and a favorable attitude. And so as entrepreneurs, again, most important thing is that I need to have continuously have that need for achievement, that I continuously have that need for achievement, that I want to excel, that my idea is unique, that I long to that I have a long term vision. These are things become very very important. And the most important thing is that need to be very clear about what I want to do, and a zeal to be sure that I want to do what I want to do. And the third is do not give up. So, three things which I would like to say: be clear, be sure, and do not give up. Right? Anyone who is in this, number one is that India would always salute people who are thinking about starting business. You are different from the rest because everyone cannot dare to become an entrepreneur. Since you've dared to become an entrepreneur, which means that you deserve a lot of respect from everyone. But as I mentioned, the journey is not a very easy journey. So you need to be very clear, be sure, and do not give up. And remember, I'll come to the other aspects a little later. Remember that no development can take place without any sacrifice. So a lot of self-restraint is required, and have a clear, frank, and critical look at one's strengths and weaknesses. Find out what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. Have a frank and critical look at your own strengths and weaknesses. Continuously gain knowledge. Try to gain knowledge. Improve your listening skills and empathy. Develop empathy, because ultimately you're going to deal with people. And throughout the journey, maintain your humor is very important, sense of humor. And two qualities that you need to culture. One is patience, and the second is periodic review. Patience is something you need to have. Look at what happened to the hospitality sector in the last 1 year. Look at the tourism sector, and look at some of the entrepreneurs who continue to exist, pivot their entire thing in spite of nothing was happening in their business. Particularly, let us look at the tourism sector. Suddenly we find that in the tourism sector there was no revenue at all, and no one knew when we are going to get next revenue was going to come in from. So what did people start doing? They started looking at different options of promoting tourism. They did not give up. They started looking at community tourism. I know a lot of entrepreneurs here, cycle tourism. They looked at other community tourism. They look at local places where people would be promoting. So that, keeping them yourself alive when the situation is not to your favor is something very important. And also knowing when to change. Another important thing is that don't get too much stuck up on what your idea is. Get the feedback from others. So that periodic review is very important. You need to have mentors. And many a time what happens is that as startups, as entrepreneurs, we get stuck to our idea. We fall in love with our idea. It's good to fall in love, but then don't be so much, hooked that, you're not taking anyone else's perspective also. So that is important. And so anyway, till I go further, do you have any questions now? Anything that you would like to ask? Anything that you would like to comment, ask? Anything that you would like to ask? Okay, if there are no questions, let me go to some of the key sectors which have come up as business opportunities during and in the future also, the business opportunities that we see. One I mentioned is the education sector, edtech, technology as being, even in future, education will always remain in the hybrid model, which will be classroom come online. So hybrid model is going to stay. If a hybrid model is going to stay, there will be a lot of more opportunities coming up in the education sector. Another change that we saw in pandemic is, did we not see the OTT platforms coming in? We always see, although the media and entertainment industry otherwise was going through a very, very bad phase, we know about people in the media and entertainment industry going through a very bad phase in their thing. But don't you know about the OTT platforms which were doing extremely well? And not only talk about Netflix, etc. What about the regional OTT platforms which have come up? Suddenly people
I hope
realize.
you all understand about the OTT platform.
I'm sure they will, right? You have been watching movies on the platform Netflix. How many of you? How many of you have been watching regional films, etc., in other such platforms from the comfort of your own houses, right?
Many of them.
So OTT platforms. Another thing which has come in and which is going to stay is the digital marketing. So digital marketing, whether even big retail houses, stores have shut down during pandemic, and many of these stores are now thinking about going to the through the digital marketing. So digital marketing, and everyone has suddenly realized that all your advertising spending has to be more, you have to be more alive on the digital space. So huge scope for people in the digital marketing business. And the more different you can be, the more there is scope, and this is going to last for many, many years. Then you have the hyper local delivery, your local delivery system, be it fruits, vegetables, be it grocery, etc. Hyper local deliveries are the new emerging sector. Then work from home. You suddenly found, this is something which is interesting, which is coming up with work from home coming in. Many of the big corporate houses have shut their corporate office. We earlier had the co-working space. Suddenly, even these co-working spaces were all lying vacant. Now, these co-working spaces have now changed, they're pivoted, and what they're doing is they're tying up with big companies, particularly in places like Mumbai, Bangalore, etc. The co-working spaces are tying up with bigger companies, and since work from home is often not comfortable for many people, they're giving their co-working spaces to the employees of big companies to come and work from there. So this co-working space or the work from home itself is becoming an opportunity for many others. Also, what you call the MICE, MICE, meetings, incentives, conferences, events. So a lot of meetings when we were going virtual. So in virtually a lot of meetings are happening, conferences, events, etc. Those were also going virtual. We have the virtual fair now today. As entrepreneurs, you have buyer seller meets virtually. So because many things will continue to remain virtual, because now people have realized that for everything you don't need to travel. When you know that everything you don't need to travel, so there'll be in future also some travel will not be going on the way it used to go on earlier. So which means there is opportunity in that sector also. Look at retail and fitness. With the gyms being closed for such a long time, now it has opened up. But don't you think habits have formed for people are not, everyone will not go back to the gym today for fitness. So fitness, a lot of online fitness opportunities have come in for business of ideas. People got used to doing everything from home. So fitness, so a lot of things will continue to remain online. So that way you will find that these are areas which have really, really emerged. And taking a cue from what has emerged in the what has emerged, the business opportunities have also come in. And as far as since it's a women, I thought a lot of women entrepreneurs will be here. I do not know how many women entrepreneurs are there, but as women, it's very important. If I'm addressing specifically to women startups and entrepreneurs here who are here. Traditionally, women have been less. Women have been lesser and lesser use of technology being made by women startups, and we have, although we are 50% of the population is women, we have only hardly registered 18 to 19% units are women enterprises. So we need more women enterprises, and we need more women who are using technology in the technology space.
And in those women enterprises also, ma'am, in their board, number of men are also there. They are just qualifying the requirement of 51%
Exactly.
stakes in their companies.
Exactly. So it's important that women come up, and women need to scale up also. And pan India also have seen that women are more concentrated in certain sectors. When we say food processing, traditionally food processing, handloom, handicraft, etc. But now I think more and more women need to come up and use technology as one of their enablers, come into other spaces. Women need to come into other spaces, because it's mostly in the services, in the event management, wedding business, or in the retail business, or in the handloom, handicraft, etc. So we need more and more women in the other technology space. So women from the science, technology, etc. sectors need to come up in larger numbers. Look at, there are a lot of schemes for women. You'll be surprised, there are more than, from the government of India itself, there are more than 63 schemes specifically for only for women. It is how much we've been able, because now I think the ecosystem is actually emerged. A lot of schemes, lot of opportunities are there for people with good ideas, and everyone is coming up, because the government has also realized that without entrepreneurs, without startups, the economy cannot grow. So it is for us actually to take this as an opportunity and take a risk, take a calculated risk, and then come up. Because here, the most motivating factor would be that you can leave behind something permanent. Entrepreneurship is actually Gita at work, There's no surety that you're going to be successful. It's your karma that you keep on doing, but there will always be results of all the efforts that you actually given. Uh, so women need to come up more and more in large numbers. They need to come out from their handloom, handicraft, pickle making, and food processing, cake and bakery. There's nothing wrong in that. But what happens is, if you continue to remain stuck only in those areas, you become more or less stereotyped in those areas. Take advantage of various schemes which are there. There are women with smaller numbers, but there are women who have come up. You look at the Makers report which came up last year, and it shows that there's a change which is happening since the last 4 or 5 years. We find the last 10 years, there has been some rise in women entrepreneurs. The Makers India report says that 297 women entrepreneurs running 285 tech startups in India, compared to 26 tech startups in 2016. So there are tech startups which have come up, but we need larger number of women to come and take up in the tech startup space. So since I wish you were all participating even more, because so that I could have answered some of your questions, I could have understood some of the startups in which you are, your startup ideas, etc. But nevertheless, I hope that I could touch upon some points which I feel is very, very pertinent for startups and entrepreneurs. Even now, if you have any question, you can please write it on your chat box, or you could even ask me any question that you have.
Actually, you have covered everything.
Okay.
This is how to start with the idea, then going for POC, then POV, then prototyping, then minimum viable product. So it's great knowledge, ma'am. It was a really a knowledgeable session, and I hope that many sectors are also covered. So from the attendees, if you have any question, please feel free to ask. Ma'am is very active in Northeast states and a very prominent personality in the state of Assam. Ma'am, what kind of startups are there in your region?
Generally, I think all startups are coming out. The startup ecosystem has actually started emerging very strongly. So service sector, IT, ITES startups have come up a lot. A lot of agri startups have come up recently, because we have a lot of potential in the agri sector. In the tourism sector, also a lot of startups have come in. So startups in the tourism sector, agri sector, and then of course anything technology being an enabler, a lot of startups have also come in.
Who are the promoters, ma'am? They are localites or some from some other states also people are coming?
No, they are mostly locals only. Mostly locals.
Anyway, ma'am, thanks a lot, ma'am, for giving
Thank
us
you.
time.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot, ma'am. We
Thank
will
you.
be having some interaction
Thank
also.
Thank
Thanks.
Thank